shows that whereas in London, where we successfully campaigned against their attempts to demonstrate in Tower Hamlets and also in Walthamstow, in both areas there was a united community response. They want to provoke and incite local Muslim organisations, but we all know we don't fall for their propaganda about how they're only opposed to Islamic extremism, and we have successfully exposed that they're a fascist organisation, because they've also, as in attacked anti-cuts demonstrations, they've also attacked PCS picket lines last year. They've attacked trade union buildings, the Unite building in Liverpool. So we know they're a classic fascist organisation that operate in a classic fascist way in terms of the communities and the organisations it targets. And we exposed that. So we had Jewish and other faith communities supporting the Muslim community, the local trade union movement in these areas, united supporting Muslim communities, which led to local pressure in both Tower Hamlets and Walthamstow, where the political establishment said to the police, we can't have them here, they're not entering this borough. And that was a result of our movement against the EDL. And so the reason why the EDL are now targeting the northwest of Manchester is because they know that there is such resistance to and opposition to the EDL in London. It's difficult for them to, it's humiliating. Twice they haven't been allowed to demonstrate in the areas that they want to and get into the heart of the lion's den, as they call it, in the big concentration of Muslim communities. They can't do it. So they're targeting the northwest of Manchester because they know if next year a high vote is delivered for the BNP or any other fascist organisation in those regions, that will be a justification for their demonstrations once again, because they can go to the police and say, well look, people voted for this, people agree with this, they agree with this agenda, and we shouldn't forget that the EDL emerged as a product of the BNP's election to the European Parliament, because it was right at that moment that the EDL emerged onto the political agenda in Britain, because that electoral breakthrough to the European Parliament emboldened fascists to mobilise on the streets in ways that we haven't seen since the 1970s National Front demonstrations. So they know the connection between a good vote for the BNP or other fascists in next year's Euro elections and street mobilisations. So it's important that we unite against the EDL and we continue to mobilise against the EDL as we have done, and that we also mobilise the votes in next year's European elections. And we should remember, we won the argument to mobilise against the EDL. People used to say, oh, you're just troublemakers, it's too confrontational. But no, we have won, and we asserted the right to mobilise against the EDL. It's a fascist organisation. After the Second World War, the whole world said never again, and we stand in that tradition. We are the majority. The majority of people oppose fascism. We have a right to make our voice heard, and as other people have said, we walk the streets, often fear from attack, racist attack or any other attack, and that's because people fought for that right. People before us campaigned against the British Union of Fascists in the 1930s, campaigned against the National Front in the 1970s, and campaigned against the BNP and other racist and fascist organisations. It was a right that was hard won, and so that's why we must continue to mobilise against fascism and also mobilise the votes against any electoral threat from fascist organisations. Thank you.
For people to contribute from the floor. I mean, I can see people from all different campaigns across the country against the EDL, so it'd be great to hear from people. I'm guessing the best thing to probably do is to come up and speak from the platform here so that everyone can hear you. I will take people as they're putting their hands up. I would like people, if they can, to keep their sort of contributions probably to a few minutes, because then we can sort of get quite a lot of people in. So if that's all right with people, that's how I'd like to run this next part of the session. I have a lady just here, go right there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah. My name is Colette Levy. I've written for your for your paper, and under a different name, but obviously you guessed. I was a victim of fascism during the war. Now, I have two questions to ask. I forget the name of the person next to you. Here, further. Yeah, no, yeah. I don't agree with you about the police. I think the English police has always shown a double standards of arresting people, killing people in police stations, and I don't see how you can be so naive about the police altogether. So that's my one first point. The second point is about Sabi. Sabi, who went to Paris. Well, I belong to la Fédération Nationale des Déportés Internés Résistants et Patriotes. They've done a lot of work, not necessarily at the level that you are doing. It's a different form it's a federation which was organized after the Second World War by the victims of the camps. And they are very active. They have associations all around the country. And they, for example, they stopped Le Pen, the father, to when he said about, the camps are a detail of history. Remember that? We stopped him. We sued him, and he lost. And then again, somebody else, Forisson, who was lecturing at Lyon, he told all kinds of lies to the students, etc., etc. And we managed to get him out of the university for 2 years without a salary. So, it may be a smaller campaign, but it is a very, very active campaign in France, mainly against anti-Semitism and, of course, against racism. I find that they are not doing is because, as I mentioned when I spoke at the Cambridge outside the Union, that they're not taking on the fact that now the victims, the scapegoats of the right, are now really the Muslims and the Gypsies, among others, mainly. Replacing the Jews are still being persecuted in France. I tell you, there was an incident not long ago. So don't say that now the Jews are but obviously they are not using the Jews now as a scapegoat. They are using the Muslims and the Gypsies.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And then we'll hear after this one.
Hi, Dave Franklin from Plymouth. I mean, it's great to hear the speakers from Waltham Forest, and it makes me jealous, to be honest, because to have the sort of mixed community that can unite and beat these bastards is really important. And unfortunately, in many places, we haven't got that. I think it's also really important to, someone said it before, not to be complacent about fighting the fascists. It seems to me I've been fighting them since before I was born. My relations fought me Cable Street. I've been fighting them part of UAF and A&L all my life. And they're like one of those awful bloody, I don't know, Japanese bindweed or whatever it is. It keeps coming up, you cut the top of it and they keep coming up. And austerity is the reason. Now austerity is the reason. And so it's really great to hear. They understand that, to be honest. That's why they're attacking us, fighting the cuts. And we have to be prepared to fight back against them. It is different, though, in places like Plymouth from places like Waltham Forest. As you may tell, I'm a Londoner. And moving down to Plymouth was a shock. It's very, very white. I think it's interesting to note that UKIP got the vote they did in Eastleigh on a racist ticket, and yet Eastleigh has something like a 1 or 2%, non-white British population. Places like Plymouth, they can get a little bit of resonance because people are not used to black and Asian people, and people are scared. We had the EDL turned up in Plymouth in 2011. They did one of their regional mobilisations, got about 200 people. I'm ashamed to say we didn't manage to stop them marching. We got about 650, but the police our friends the police, kept us apart and wouldn't allow us to stop them. We weren't big enough to stop them. Now, on some spurious issue about, some idiot in a throwaway comment that said he can't afford to reopen a nightclub, that he might turn it into a mosque. So now they've announced that they're going to march or do something again in April. These bastards, their heads keep coming back up, and we have to cut them off every time. So we will be, we'll organise a meeting next week and all the rest of it. We'll mobilise to stop them, and no doubt we'll stop them, and no doubt there'll be a small turnout. But we have to be prepared. Every single time they put the head up, we have to cut it off and make sure that they can't get any traction, they can't build. I think it's really important in predominantly white communities, much more difficult. So, comrades, it's great to see you all here. We've got to keep fighting and make sure that, never again remains our slogan.
UAF. And I just wanted to say, Richard's absolutely right about these groups hiding their true colours and finding ways of popping up in different guises. The group that we've had to contend with in Brighton over the last few years is March for England. And just recently, March for England, they've got quite a history, but a low profile. Although just recently they were mentioned in a High Court injunction along with other far-right groups, including the EDL. But for most people, March for England, certainly for the first few years that they came to Brighton, was seen as an innocuous celebration of St George's Day, and people couldn't understand why we took issue with them. And gradually, over the last sort of 4 years, we've worked really hard in Brighton to make people realise, and in fact, I have to say, March for England did a very good job of that for themselves, marching through the streets with their offensive racist banners and chants. And so we have managed to, certainly last year, mobilise a really effective campaign against the March for England, and I'm proud to say that in Brighton we had our very own Battle of Queen's Road, where we stopped the march from following its police-sanctioned route, and they had to be rerouted, the march had to be cut short, and they ended up kettled on the green in the centre of Brighton, which was really, really good. They were outnumbered at 10 to 1, so they were kettled by the police, but then the police themselves were kettled by the massive demonstrators against them, and they were then escorted back to the station, completely humiliated. So that was a real success, but unfortunately that won't stop them coming back. It didn't stop them coming back in June under the pretext of some royal event to cause havoc. The reason they choose Brighton is a bit difficult. Obviously it's a seaside town and it's a nice day out. It's easy to sell to the EDL. But I think one of the reasons is, of course, homophobia. And what they do when they come and they finish their march is rampage round the pubs of Brighton and focusing particularly on any gay pubs that they can. Our campaign has been really successful. We had a great year last year. We're mobilising again this year. We're hoping to make it even bigger and better. Yeah, and one of the things that I went to Walthamstow, and that was really inspiring. And one of the things that I really want to take from the Walthamstow campaign is the involvement of faith groups. That's one area that we haven't been so successful with in Brighton. So, Father Saxby, I might want to catch you at some point and talk to you about how we best do that. Thank you.
Yeah, hello, I'm Dean Harris. I'm one of the coordinators of Waltham Forest, UAF, etc. I just want to put something in context though. These things aren't just born. They grow out of past experiences. And at one time in 2008, when I first started in Walthamstow, there was 3 of us and a dog in my front room. Month after month after month after month. It was almost a wish of God, when they're bloody going to come and doing all this work. So it is built on lots of stuff. We defeated the bastards. The BNP had their red, white, blue days. Remember that club? We got rid of that. We Tower Hamlets, Stoke, hate racism scheme, looting and barking. We built on them things. It built morale, and that's how we did it. And the thing is, we had arguments, and I think someone else will probably talk about that. What we made the campaign Waltham Forest was really a one-trick pony. and that is we're going to defeat the Nazis, and we have to work together to do that. There was lots of people with different political affiliations. It's really important to remember, when you go in a hall and have a meeting, that's the way to go forward. We didn't want to, obviously we put it in the context of austerity because you just have to look around, but the main thing was we welcomed everyone, Christians, Muslims, trade unions, Labour Party came in, the Greens, etc. And we all argued that we had to get on the streets as well. It's not about macho posturing, it's actually getting out there and confront them and saying, look at our numbers. It's so important to remember that. You can't just have 20 people from the pub going down the road when they're in town. Everyone has to go. I just want to talk a little bit about the Labour councillors, because that was an absolute disgrace what they did to us. I'm sorry, but I want to bang on about that because they should be absolutely ashamed. They put on a fairground that day, and they had more security guards around that fairground than they had punters. And their security guards were trying to intimidate ordinary marchers, and it was an absolute horrible thing that they'd done, and we're never going to forget that. And when it comes to the marches against austerity, etc., that's a reminder. I just want to say something about the naivety of the police. They nick us, they don't nick them. They only nick them when they're really good. We put on a scarf, they bring us in and say, take that scarf off. Yet they let that scumbags wear pig masks and things like that. I think we've got to really go on that. And you just have to look at Golden Dawn. 60%, I think it was, of the old bill in Greece said they support the Golden Dawn Party. And I'm sorry, we can't pretend that British police haven't got the same kind of way of thinking. It would be ridiculous to do that. One thing I want to say about going forward, you can't stop. You have your victories, but you have your celebrations. And your celebrations, you have debates. You bring stuff in and you continue. We've started our Never Again campaign in Waltham Forest. That's this year's campaign. We've already had some great stuff going on. And we're working with Searchlight locally, etc. There's hardly any sectarianism like there was 2 years ago. People know they can't afford this crap. So I just want to say, no platform, no pass around, never again.
I'm Richard from Cambridge United Against Fascism, and Cambridge is a small city not far from here, but the last week it seems to be the centre of the anti-fascist struggle, because I came to the university a week and a bit ago, and last Saturday we were on the streets opposing the EDL. I want to say it's a really successful day. On the Love Music Racing from Local, we had the arrow, which shows how we tried to split the Nazis, and that's just what we did on Saturday. Half of them, 26 of them I think it was, were in a pen getting absolutely drunk on a local park. The other half didn't even dare turn up. They stayed in the pub because they were so demoralised and depressed and embarrassed by their own turnout. And the ones that were on the park waited for our demonstration to pass. They knew we were coming back, and they got the police to escort them out of town because they were so scared of what would happen when we came back. And the reason for the success was because it was all called by United Against Fascism. It was on our day, on our terms, but it was massively supported by the local community. I got a phone call the night before from the local MP who finally decided to support it, a Liberal person who's been opposing it before. The MEP led the march along with the MP. It was fantastically supported by the Muslim community, some of whom are here today have written us thanks. Local trade unions, by football fans, by local councillors and so on. It was supported by the wide community, but, as I said, it was on the terms of United Against Fascism, marching against them and not letting them go through our streets. And to get to that position, it hasn't all been exciting and front page of French newspapers and so on. There's been lots of quite dull stuff, which is what I wanted to explain what we've done over the years. We've had regular meetings once a month at least. Sometimes they've been poorly attended, sometimes you think, why are we doing this? But the proof of it was shown last week. We leaflet football matches, we've had gigs after gigs after gigs, like music races and gigs, schools in town, leafleting in town, all sorts of things that aren't particularly glamorous, but have definitely been worth the while because of the fantastic unity that we've been able to forge and the respect that United Against Fascism has in the city. And obviously, it was great to see what happened last Saturday, but it's not the end of things. Perhaps it's the end of the EDL, but it's not the end of racism, is it? The society we're in, with cutbacks and crisis, racism is bound to raise its head again, so you have to be prepared for that. I mean, we're thinking about what we're going to do next. We're obviously concerned with the vote that UKIP got. We're looking out in the Fens, which is an area around the edge of Cambridgeshire, which has less organised anti-fascist opposition, and not the EDL, but anti-immigrant groups are organising demonstrations against migrant workers, and we think we're going to work with the local trades council in opposing that. What I really want to say is it's worth doing the boring dull things, because if you do those. When the moment comes, you have to test yourself, you can prove to be effective.
Yeah, my name is EDL. And last Saturday, we were in Cambridge supporting the United Fashion demonstration, which the previous speaker mentioned. And we had a wonderful shining banner there. And there were 30 EDL turned up, they were penned in by the police. And there was not a single Sikh supporting them in their pen. And people may remember that about 2 years ago the situation was very different when a number of misguided Sikh youths had started to support them, and in fact one of them had become the spokesperson. He was always on the front of the television cameras, and a number of them were also in the background. And that's when we launched our campaign, because they carried the Sikh flag on the Indian marches. They were going to use the Sikh insignia in their vile anti-Muslim propaganda. So we started a campaign, and we got quite a lot of support from some of the major Sikh organizations, Sikh temples, also a number of Sikh student societies. And since then we've been campaigning against them, and we've been on a number of protest marches around the country, like in Bristol, in Luton, we were also in school as well. As a result of our campaign, I'm glad to say that most of those Sikhs supporting EDL have now disappeared. They have not been seen for a number of months. However, a very worrying situation took place in Leicester last month, when some 40 Sikhs, mainly from Derby, Birmingham, etc., they came to Leicester and they attacked a Muslim-owned restaurant, and a number of the customers and also the workers were injured. And the police arrested 6 the attackers. The police issued a statement saying that the attack took place because of some false rumors about some Sikh girl being groomed. Although later on the police arrested 5 Muslim men. So we issued a statement appealing for calm, and also saying that people, no matter what, the people should not take the law in their own hands. And the EDL tried to explore the situation. And a similar situation took place also last year in Luton, when there were also some rumors of grooming, when 200 Sikhs turned out also at the police station, and also the EDL, some of the leaders turned up as well, wearing false turbans and pretend to be Sikhs. But I think all the rumors, the key is to smash the EDL, to stop the EDL and the BNP. That's because the Sikhs also sometimes fall for the rumors. So the key to stop all these things are just stop the EDL from marching, just stop the BNP. Thank you.
I'm Laura James. I'm a member of the NUJ London Magazine branch, and I'm also a member of London Stowe UAF. I just wanted to make a couple of points about arguments that came up during our campaign, and also about the importance of having local UAF groups. In his contribution, Dean talks about the fact that the campaign in Walthamstow didn't start when we heard that the EDL were coming, but started maybe 3 years earlier when the UAF group locally was set up. And that meant that when we heard that the EDL were coming to Walthamstow, we were straight away able to call a meeting which had about 25 people, 25 activists, anti-fascist committed activists at it, which meant that we were in already a strong position to launch a campaign. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is sort of the argument that whether it should be a broad campaign that involves everyone, or whether it should be a kind of ideologically pure campaign. The argument was raised in our campaign that people should only be allowed to be involved in fighting EDL if they were against the cuts. And we had to argue as UAF locally that a lot of us in that group were against the cuts, but there were also a lot of people out there who weren't convinced on the arguments around the cuts, and we wanted them to work with us because a fight against the EDL had to be the broadest and biggest it can be. And that argument laid the groundwork for us having a demonstration of 4,000 people. Another point that came up was people saying we need to decide months in advance what we're going to do when the EDL came, and we had to argue that that's not the important point now. The important point now is arguing with people that they have to be there. The numbers on the day will decide what we do. And the fact that we won that argument and made it the biggest, broadest campaign it could be meant that we had 4,000 people who could march through the streets of Walthamstow, say these are our streets, these are not the streets of the fascists have got no right to march here, we could block the road and they did not pass.
Hello, I'm Jason. I write just an online blog, I'm on special. I've been doing it since the T20 protest when I found out about the police. This is a question to the panel. I often go to different marches, different organisations and just do this photograph and take notes and write an article. The one thing, I know someone's already mentioned March Greenwood, the one thing I was concerned about with the UAF, and I'm not sure if they were UAF or whether they was just people affiliated with, but I did notice that a lot of things were being thrown at women and children who were in the march. Now I know the EDL, I don't agree with the EDL, but I know the EDL where I was president, not all of them were EDL. And I take quite a stance against people using violence against people who are there just to celebrate an English thing. Whether or not the EDL are there or not, I don't agree with